Hello.
All right, so I think both Dr. Van Laar and Dr. Leichliter wanted to say a couple words before we jump into the questions. Take it away.
I say hello, everyone. It's really good to be here today, and thanks for joining us. I'm hoping we can answer some questions. Usually, if you have a question, someone else does. So hopefully, we can cover a lot of ground here today.
And I'm happy to be here too. As long as my phone doesn't blow up and tell me that my wife is going into labor right now, I will hang out. But yeah, we'll answer as many questions as we can. And if you have more questions, feel free to send them in. Please feel free to send them in, and we'll do our best to get to as many as we can until David gives us the axe, and we'll go from there. Just start. All right, I'll start with some questions that already came in. I'll read out the question first, and then I'll give you the best answer I can make up. And likewise, I think she'll do the same. So I'll start with the first one here. Question for me. It seems that more attention in research is being done to control tremors with very little focus on gait freezing. Is there a reason for that? Do less PD patients have that symptom? Yes, there's a reason for it. No, not less patients have that as a symptom, although probably more people do tremor than have freezing of gait. However, the reason is it's much harder to fix. At the end of the day, freezing of gait is probably one of the hardest symptoms that we have to treat. It responds very poorly to medications, whereas tremors respond great to medicines. And so, as doctors and as researchers, we like things that work. So we feel much better about giving somebody a medication for a tremor because then they stop shaking. Whereas if you try to target freezing of gait, we do have some medicines that I use, and if you come to my office, we talk about them, but at the end of the day, it's a much harder symptom to try to fix. And research has tried. It's not like they haven't looked into it. It's just that not really a whole lot has panned out. And so I think that's why you see less things aimed at freezing of gait and more things at tremors.
Yeah, I was just going to add, they're actually looking at changing the placement for like DBS to directly address the freezing gait. It's such a problem that, in fact, I mean, as you said, the research is happening, and that's one way. It's a toughie though. Okay.
We just take turns.
Yeah, I like that idea. So I've got a little bit of a long one. Let me just read this because I'm sure there's a lot of people in the audience here who can probably relate to this. So as my husband's Parkinson's has progressed, I often felt each new program, so like delayed disease and others, each new therapeutic development is too late. Please, as you talk, keep in mind what can still be done for and accomplished by someone more advanced, especially with dementia. That makes it nearly impossible for him to learn new things. Dementia is said to be non-reversible, yet many things in the past said that to be impossible or only possible until they aren't. I love that. In particular, what can be done for improving cognition? Are there innovative approaches? So I think there's a couple of, again, one of the questions here is, this is an advanced stage. What can we do in this case? And I think, as you probably just heard, exercise is still really critical here. There's a lot to be said about just getting up, moving around. That actually can help with cognition in of itself, helps with mood, can help regulate sleep. It's hard to motivate someone who doesn't understand why they need to do the exercise. I can appreciate that, but that's definitely a tool I would definitely take advantage of. There are other things though that can help cognition and socialization, things like just having friends around for the social engagement, but even pets can actually offer that same sort of benefit in a maybe a safer way. And as far as like innovative changes, this is a huge problem. And I think one of the things to do is, to try and prevent Parkinson's from progressing to this stage in the first place. That would be ideal. And that's part of what I hope to talk to you about a little bit later today. And I think there are a lot of therapies out there that are trying to take advantage of what we learned from Alzheimer's, for example, and trying to apply it to dementia and Parkinson's, though it is a bit different. But there's a lot of research on this right now because we do know it's a big problem, and it's not the same thing as Alzheimer's, but the physical activity and keeping engaged, those are really the best things for right now that we can offer.
The only thing I would add to that, it would be, in addition to all of those things, exercise. And you're right, a lot of the programs that keep coming up are hard for people with advanced disease. There are some modifications you can do, but at the end of the day, you're right, it's difficult. A lot of it comes down to caregiver support too, which I know the Parkinson's guys here are really big on. It's not just working with the patient on what they can do, it's working with you on how you can help them adapt or live or do things, try to motivate them to continue to do things and try to work with them from that aspect. So there's a lot of things you can work on, but I agree 100%, it's hard. I'm going to kind of lump the next two questions together because they're both related to COVID. And I think a lot of people are going to have this question or these questions. So one question is, how does the stress of thinking about COVID affect the progression of Parkinson's disease? Economic and daily life changes have made life very stressful. And then the next one is, what will a doctor's appointment look like with COVID? And so there's a lot of questions around coronavirus and how things are reopening. And if you think it's confusing, we think it's confusing too. Believe me, they're not telling us things that they're not telling you. Our recommendations are changing on a day-to-day basis, so believe me, it's not like that we're trying to confuse the public for fun. It's not much better for us as physicians, and trying to answer questions is very difficult. So the stress is out there, and I don't think the stress is going away anytime soon. I think this is something we're going to be dealing with for a little while. And yes, just like any other stress out there, it's going to make Parkinson's disease worse. Everybody who has Parkinson's disease, all of their symptoms are affected by stress. They shake more, they're stiffer, they're slower, you walk worse. You know, it's now with stay-at-home orders and have social distancing, which we're still trying to do, wearing a mask, you know, exercise programs are closed, boxing programs are closed. It's really hard for people to maintain all of the things that they're used to doing and they're normally doing. And so, yes, it's all going to impact patients with Parkinson's disease, 100%. It's not permanent, I hope. And so I think at the end of the day, we're going to be able to get back to a more normal life or some sort of normal life. But you have to get through this, and you have to get through this as well as you can. You have to keep exercising. You have to stay active. You have to keep interacting with other people as best you can. But just anticipate that it is going to impact your day-to-day life. It is going to impact your symptoms. And then an appointment with COVID, well, that's a whole different question. I've been seeing patients a couple different ways. So I've been seeing patients in my office, although they're trying to spread out patients, and generally you're not allowed to bring anybody with you unless you absolutely have to, and the waiting room is spread out. So I think right now in my office here at the Parkinson's Foundation in Bellevue, I think I have all of 2 or 3 chairs in my waiting room because you're not allowed to have that many people in the waiting room. I'm also seeing patients via video visits through our Allegheny Health Network program that we have. I can't say it's my favorite way to take care of patients, but it is an opportunity for people to not have to leave their house, not have to go out. They're able to do it via a computer or a phone or a laptop or something like that, and we can kind of do a face-to-face visit via the internet. But just anticipate that I'm going to have a mask on. If you come to my office, I'm going to have a mask on. I'm going to have a face shield on. I'm going to look like I'm ready for outer space, but that's the way that we have to do it. There's not going to be a lot of people there. You're not allowed to bring a lot of visitors. You're going to be kind of isolated in an exam room because we don't want people hanging out in the waiting room and really spending a lot of time in close proximity to a lot of patients. And so it is going to be different. And I don't know when that's going to change. But just anticipate that things are going to be a little bit different. You're going to see a lot more use of technology. This has actually exploded the use of technology in healthcare now. And so it is going to make things a little bit different. It's doable. It's not ideal, at least not yet. We're working on making it better. But we are still seeing patients and just anticipate some changes. I don't know if you've had anything different.
So I've done a little bit of in-person visits, and it's just different. I think we're all just used to conversing, and you know, I give lots of hugs and things like that, and you can't do any of that now, and so it makes that relationship a little bit more awkward. You know, I do think that there's a lot of what we do, especially for Parkinson's patients, that just can't be done virtually, and so there's still an important place for it. The stress question, I just wanted to say one more thing about it too, because I get asked this a lot, and you know, I don't expect there to be any permanent effects from the stress that this may be causing. I think that is a concern I've had other people voice to me before. So. Actually, just right to this next question. It actually fits in nicely. Okay, so how do stress and anxiety impact our body comfort? Can they make our PD symptoms more pronounced? And what about depression? I mean, this is a perfect tie-in to what we were just talking about. And, there's, emotions that absolutely have an impact on the symptoms. And it's not just Parkinson's. Any neurologic disorder can become more pronounced in matter of stress. And stress can be, anxiety and things like this, but even like too hot or too cold, the physical stressors can impact symptoms as well. But all these things, as I just said, should be transient. They shouldn't last. It can feel that way, I'm sure, in the middle of it, but I don't expect it to be a permanent change. But for reasons that I think we still don't quite understand, even little bits of stress can really make symptoms feel worse for a bit. As far as depression, that's so complicated in a way, because sometimes people can see that their symptoms are getting worse, and that can maybe worsen depression, and it gets to be this like big feed forward issue. But it gets harder to manage things like stress and anxiety with Parkinson's. The Parkinson's itself is fighting against it, making it harder. So just keep that in mind. That this is part of the process, and make sure you reach out and have someone there to help support you.
And likewise, all of those come more frequently with people with Parkinson's disease. So it's a part of the disease. And I know a lot of people come to me and say, we talk about anxiety, we talk about depression, and I often refer people to psychiatry and psychology, and everybody throws up their arms and says, I'm not crazy. What are you sending me to psychiatry for? Well, trust me, they are much better at it than I am. And you should really accept those help. Or those specialties that can help us too, because they really do play a big role in what we do. I just wanted to touch back and circle back to what Al was talking about earlier. If you guys were on, that also plays a role here. Getting in your circle or social kind of aspect of the disease is important, and all that plays a role in this too. So all things to keep in mind and try to work on.
Yep.
How can I work on not being depressed when living in isolation with Parkinson's disease? There's a lot of talk here about depression, anxiety, and again, I think everybody's becoming a little depressed, especially until we went green and until we started being able to get out. I mean, believe me, I see it in my house too. It's not isolated to people with Parkinson's disease or any neurological condition. It's everybody. There's no easy answer to that question. You know that. You have to do the best you can. You have to stay active. So I hope you listened to Deb, who was before us. If you're my patient, you heard everything that I talk about in my office on a daily basis about exercise, doing things you like to do because you'll be more likely to keep doing it, how much you have to do. So staying active is really the key to success. Yes, I recognize it's very hard to do. It's so much easier when you have a class or a boxing program or a gym with friends.
So true.
And until we can get back to that, you have to find ways to stay active socially, physically, mentally. All of these things are going to be what help you do the best. It's a challenging time for everybody. Don't get down on that. Just know everybody else is kind of in the same situation. And you just have to kind of work on it the best you can. Specific examples would be exactly what I just said. So getting out with walks. Technology is great. It actually allows, if you can't go visit somebody, you can almost always do a face-to-face, video chat or something on a computer. I didn't really know how to do it very much either, don't worry. But there are people out there that can help you work through this. And so you have to find ways like that to stay active in every way, and that'll really help you get through it.
Even a phone call, I think any way that you can to stay engaged with family and friends. I think we all feel incredibly isolated, and even just getting back, I think it's going to have its own challenges. And trying to get back in the swing of things. So. So this is actually fairly related too. So there's question of apathy. So apathy is the enemy of exercise. There's a lot of enemies. It's a big one though. Can you recommend ways to combat apathy? This is a tough one. This is a real tough one.
That's why I gave it to you.
I knew that. So
I purposely said give all of the hard questions to Dr. Van Laar because she's way better than I am.
But apathy is like with freezing a gate, like we can at least sometimes address that. There are some things that we can do. Apathy is a toughie. And a lot of the dopaminergic medications don't really touch it. And I want to stress here, apathy is not depression. Like, these are two completely different things. Depression's actually, we can treat that fairly well in Parkinson's, but apathy is a tricky one. As regarding exercise, maybe this is a specific apathy from an unwilling partner, but the piece of advice I usually give is, put your shoes on. If you're going to go exercise, put your shoes on. Typically once you get those on your feet, you have to go. And I think it's really just getting past that first step that I think has been very helpful for a lot of people. But it's doing it with a friend is also helpful. Trying to challenge yourself with somebody else. There are other ways of trying to make a game out of it and not feel like such a chore. But just getting started, I've always found to be the more challenging part.
Yeah, there's no answer to that question. There just isn't. But everything she said is exactly it. If you can find somebody who keeps you motivated, it really does help. If you're accountable to somebody else, and this is why I think the exercise programs were so good. The boxing classes were so good.
So true.
The YMCA classes are so good because it's not just you. People were expecting you to be there. People were counting on you to be there. You carpool or you go together. If you can find somebody who can help keep you motivated, it will infinitely heighten the chances of you doing the exercise. But she's right. There's no easy solution for that. It's one of those vicious cycles. You don't feel like exercising or moving or doing anything, so you don't do it, and then you feel less like doing it next time, and it becomes this vicious cycle that you somehow have to turn around. If you can exercise, or if you can get up and just do it, or if you can convince yourself or motivate yourself to do it, then the next time it's a little bit easier. The next time it's a little bit easier, and you reverse that cycle. But that is absolutely a very, very difficult thing to try to fix. And right now there's no cure for it. There's no medicine for it. You just kind of have to keep working on it. This is a question I get every day of my life. I don't know if you can see that one. It's how close are we to having a cure for Parkinson's disease? What do they keep telling us? 5 years? Isn't that what they said 20 years ago?
Actually, 2 years in Life magazine.
I'm pretty sure when Michael J. Fox was diagnosed in his book, he said, and this was what, 25 years ago, he said they'd have a cure in 5 years. I think we still are saying 5 years. So I don't know the answer to that question. Do you know the answer to that question? I don't know the answer to that question.
James Parkinson, for which this is named after. I mean, this was diagnosed 200 years ago. And actually, if you read his essay from the original paper, he actually says, it's not too long before we're going to find a cure for this. 200 years later, and we still don't have much more to say. And, I'm going to be talking to you later today about something I think could be very helpful, but so I'm a little bit biased there. But I think it's actually very hard to, what do we want to call a cure? And, I think that if, especially for the neurodegenerative disorders, so Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and where the brain cells are slowly degenerating, it's really tricky. And, I think if we were able to do something where it really, really slowed down the progression, maybe that would be in a lot of ways seen as curative in a way. And, there's a lot of people who I think very early on in Parkinson's would say things weren't that bad, like it was annoying, but you could get by and do what you need to do. The Sinemet was working well. The concern really for a lot of people, and a lot of people probably in the audience now, is when those things don't work as well, what do you do? And so I think if we were at a point where we could actually prevent all the long-term complications from happening, I think it would be a manageable chronic disorder.
Well, and the short answer is we don't know. Believe me, we're working on it. It's not like people aren't trying. I know it seems like people aren't trying because you just hear failure after failure of disease modification. You get hyped up and everybody gets excited about a thing only to find out that when they trial it, it doesn't work. They're working on it. It's just, this is a really hard thing to come up with, and it's a really hard idea to tackle because it's so complicated. And so the short answer is I don't know when they're going to have a cure. We are working on it. I hope it's 5 years from now, but I can't say that's accurate, and we'll keep you updated. As soon as I find out, I'll let you know.
Yeah, fair enough. So another question about cognition. So how can I better engage my mind in an effort to combat changes in cognition? So there's a lot of brain games and these sorts of things that I think people have pursued to help, keep them sharp. And I think that those are all good. There's a lot to be said about trying to get yourself to do something new. It's the novelty of something that actually is really good for the brain and for growth. And trying to learn is really the best way to fight cognition. And that's really hard to do, especially for someone who hasn't had to go back to school in a while. But even if it's, it's sometimes hard. I have a lot of professors and other people like that. And what I challenge them with is like, go start learning about a whole new topic that you're not comfortable with. And it's that kind of that stretch where I think you actually get a little bit more benefit from a cognitive standpoint. But I cannot emphasize enough the benefits of exercise. It's all the good, clean, healthy living your mom would have told you. All those things still apply, and probably more so if there are concerns with cognition. It's really that simple.
100% accurate. I mean, just get up, get moving, do new things. I mean, I look at and I've thought about this in me. It's not just you, it's me too. I have to keep things active. I always look at what I'm doing in my day-to-day life. Is it making me better in any way? Am I physically or mentally? Am I doing something that I haven't done before? So I personally took up trying to learn a new language. I have no reason to learn Italian. I have zero Italian in me, but my wife's family is Italian, and so now I'm trying to learn Italian. Again, I can't say I'm very good at it, but at the end of the day, it's something that I don't know. It's new for me. It keeps my brain active, and I think anybody can do something like that. It just takes the willingness to do it and the effort. What can you expect when starting medications for Parkinson's disease? Unknowns cause me anxiety. Unknowns cause me anxiety too. I don't disagree with that at all. That is a really loaded question because it depends on what medicine you were started, what they were aiming for with the medications, what your symptoms are, and just about every other thing you can think about. Generally, if you're coming to me and we're starting you on a new medicine, I'll usually tell you what I expect to happen. But again, usually what I'm aiming for is to try to help you do better in some way, shape, or form. I don't expect medicines to take away all your symptoms. I don't expect it to fix you. I don't expect it to cure you. Usually if I'm starting somebody on medication, it's because their symptoms are impacting their day-to-day life. If your symptoms aren't bothering you or aren't impacting your day-to-day life or aren't keeping you from doing things, I probably wouldn't have put you on medicine. And so generally what I'm aiming for when I start somebody on medications is trying to correct whatever it is that's impacting your day-to-day life. If your tremors are keeping you from being able to, go out because you don't want people to see you shake, then I'm trying to calm down your tremors. Probably not get rid of them, but at least calm them down enough to help you function better. If it's your walking that's a problem, well, then I'm trying to keep you upright and trying to make it so you're more steady on your feet. If it's stiffness, if you have trouble getting out of a chair or rolling over in bed, which I hear all the time, then I'm trying to help that. Again, when I'm starting somebody on medications, it's not because I'm trying to fix them. I'm not trying to put them back to whatever normal is. I'm really starting medications for a specific reason. And if you come to me or if you're my patient, I guarantee you've heard the questions, what bothers you the most, and does it bother you enough to do something about it? And whatever the answer to those questions are really dictate what medicine I put you on, and that really dictate what I'm trying to accomplish with the medicine. So it's really probably, if somebody started you on medicines recently, it was probably to correct or to help or to minimize something that's impacting your day-to-day life, and that's really what they would be aiming for or looking for.
I think there's a lot of anxiety that can come with starting a new medication. It's just enhanced in some Parkinson's patients, but I think that if you have a really upfront conversation with your doctor, and the other thing that I've talked to patients before, and I think has helped ease this a little bit, is usually if there are symptoms that are coming up because of a medication, usually we stop the medication, it goes away. So these are again not permanent things, and I don't even usually always list every little thing that can happen. It just sometimes it makes more worry. And I say, if there's a problem, you let me know, and then we can, customize this. And that's the thing about the movement specialties. Everything we do is tailored to that individual. There is no one right way to do any of this. So, just keep a good dialogue with your doctor.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. It's all directed. And actually, I'm going to jump ahead because my next question is sort of a side effect question.
Oh, yeah.
This is more of a direct side effect. It's what Parkinson's disease medicines cause ankles to swell. Pretty much all of them, but the main culprits are usually amantadine, or Mirapex, kind of the
agonists.
dopamine agonists. Those are probably the two groups that cause the most ankle swelling, but I've seen it with carbidopa, levodopa. It can happen with just about everything, but those would be the two that I see the most.
Yeah, no, definitely. And sometimes the issue is you don't let it get away. So be on top of the swelling, because it gets harder and harder to walk it back if it gets to be too bad. So don't forget to bring that kind of thing up to your doctor.
Definitely always tell us about side effects. That it helps us help you, trust me.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was it.
I don't have any more questions, Dave. You got any more over there?
Yeah, we have quite a few questions coming in from the audience, and let me get there. And first one would be, and I'm just going to throw these out.
Go for it.
Yeah. Have the doctors had success with extending on time with extended release Sinemet? Have they had success with Rytary?
Do you want to go first?
Sure. So, I think we should put the caveat in there that they're coming out with a new Rytary. So, because it hasn't really been, I think, in my hands, we didn't get quite the on time that I think we were all hoping for. That being said, I've had some patients that, really prefer it, and they feel like it really did exactly what it was supposed to do and really extended the on time. This is an issue with, since the beginning of Sinemet, really is trying to get that duration of benefit, and a lot of the efforts in making new Sinemets, basically it's just because this is such an issue. But again, if you know how to titrate it correctly, I think it can do fairly well.
Yeah, Rytary, I'd say 50-50, maybe in my experience. People continue it because they like it, or it's better, or it helps more. 50-50, switch right back. I still try it because I think it's a reasonable drug, especially for what you're trying to accomplish. The controlled release Sinemet I've had less success with during the day. I predominantly save that for at night when you don't really need to feel it work, because in my experience, you don't feel it kick in as well as the immediate release Sinemet. When you're sleeping, you don't need it to kick in. You just need it to last to the morning. So that's usually when I predominantly use the CR. But again, everybody's a little bit different. We tailor things differently to different patients, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. We'll try just about everything, whatever it takes to get you doing better.
I would just add, I've actually had particular good luck with extended release, like with Rytary and DBS, where you have like these two really long-acting agents that are working kind of in combination. I actually thought that worked very well.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
All right, our next question is the feeling of overstressed muscles common, especially when no exercise is involved? Muscles involved are lower abdomen and thigh muscles.
So yeah, I get a lot of people that have muscle cramping. Muscle stiffness is a part of the disease. It's a cardinal feature of Parkinson's disease. Rigidity is a cardinal feature of what we're looking for to even make the diagnosis. So yes, everybody out there probably is experiencing very similar things, where a lot of my patients come in with muscle spasms, muscle stiffness, cramping, soreness, all of the things that you're probably experiencing. Oftentimes it is in the leg, oftentimes it's at night. I hear that all the time, and we try to help minimize that from a variety of things. We adjust medicines, exercise and stretching tend to help, different things like that. But yeah, it's a very common thing, and we run into it all the time, and we have to work on it.
From the patients coming back to me, I honestly, medication adjustments can help, but stretching seems to be the biggest thing. And it's like, as soon as you get up in the morning and before you go to bed, just try and stretch everything out. But, I think that the muscle soreness is maybe a symptom of rigidity or that stiffness, and it's felt that way. But it's there's ways to help with that, though.
The next question is, can improving the gut microbiome help reverse brain deterioration?
That's yours.
All right, I'm taking that. So
the hard ones go to her.
They want to do this. The idea is that you set up your immune system is mostly in your gut, especially as you get older. And the idea is that if you make your microbiome super healthy and you've got all the good gut bacteria there, that it helps to potentially reduce inflammation. And the hope is then it also helps to reduce neuroinflammation as well. And I think that there's a lot of interest in this. My concern though is that sometimes because, you know, the horse is out of the barn. And,
Right.
you know, these sort of measures are just a little bit too little too late. And, you know, I think we really need to get better at, you know, we need to find a way of diagnosing it a lot earlier. That would help a lot of things. But trying to intervene with things at a much earlier stage as well is, I think, going to be critical for that. But
Well, and I
it won't hurt, though, to be healthy and eat well. Yeah.
Well, and we don't eat very well to begin with, and so the American diet is very bad. So we don't set up our gut to help us in any way, shape, or form in this country with our diets, with our lifestyles, or anything like that. We've been looking at the gut-brain connection for a really long time. We've known there's a correlation between Parkinson's disease and the GI system for a really long time. And we've looked at a variety of different ways of not only proving that connection, but working or using that connection to our advantage. I mean, we've known constipation predates motor symptoms since the beginning of Parkinson's disease, I think. So this is not a new idea. It's not a new concept. We're still trying to figure out how to use it to our advantage, though. That's kind of where we're running into the problem. And part of it is by the time the motor symptoms arrive and you develop for what you get diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, your GI system has already been affected for a long time. And so is it too late to make a change at that point? Ideally, yes, we'd start being healthier from a GI system much earlier in life or your whole life, which is easier said than done, but we're still trying to figure out how to get that as soon as possible to use that to our advantage. So it's a good question, and yes, we're working on that, but we haven't figured that out yet.
We have a question. Again, it's somewhat related to the use of the extended carbidopa-levo medicines. Do you have experience, or do you recommend using Sinemet during the day and maybe a long-term Rytary at night or in conjunction?
We'll mix and match whatever it takes to get you doing better. I mean, that's what I want people to understand when they come see me is there's no rules. There's nobody looking over my shoulder that says you can't do that, except for the insurance companies. They do dictate some of what I do. But really, in terms of mixing and matching medicines, I will do whatever it takes. And some things that I do don't always make sense, but for that individual patient, they do. And so really, treatment options are tailored to you. So if we need to use an Embresia, a Parcopa, a Sinemet CR.
Whoa.
Can't say I've ever done that, but if we needed to, I would do it if we could get them all. I mean, again, it really comes down to what you need, what we're trying to accomplish, and yes.
This is why you need to see a movement specialist. There's, you know, it takes practice and training and experience, and, you know, sometimes not doing it so well the first time in order to really know how to customize, you know, these regimens for everybody individually.
Question, could you please address, now I'm going to mispronounce this, aphasia as a symptom of PD? This seems like a very understudied, underdiscussed symptom.
It's akathisia. It's really the inability to sit still, which usually we see as a side effect of medications to the disease. So it's usually it's a dyskinesia or a form of a dyskinesia or a side effect, or you see it with side effects of other medications as well. Although I think, if I'm remembering correctly, that I've actually seen it in somebody that I didn't think was a side effect of the medicine, but thought it was more related to their disease. And so I think it can be just about any of those things. And similar to the other things that we've talked about, things like apathy, things like, you know, motivation, these are hard things to fix. And so that's why you aren't going to hear as much about them, because they're hard to pick up on, especially if you're not coming to somebody who's used to seeing it. They're hard to put a word around or describe, and they're really hard to treat. There are things you can do, and yes, we address it, but again, coming back to those specific problems, bring it up. The key to success here is bring it up. Tell me, tell your doctor, tell whoever's taking care of you about whatever it is that's bothering you, whatever it is that's keeping you from doing whatever it is you want to do, whatever it is that's interfering with or impacting your day-to-day life, and then we'll work on it. You'd be surprised how many times I get, oh, how are you doing? Of course, the number one answer is this fine. I'm doing great. And then we go through and they're like, I'm doing okay. And then as they're trying, you know, I'm like, oh, great, you're doing great. Let's keep everything the same. We're not going to change anything. Keep exercising. I'll see you back in a few months. And as I'm walking out the door, like, oh, but I forgot to tell you that my leg fell off the other day. And so you bring it up. Just bring up whatever it is that's happening. Bring up the problems, because that's the best way to deal with it. I always tell my patients, there's plenty of medicines out there. There's almost a medicine for everything. I can come up with something that I can do for just about everything that you bring up, but if you don't tell me about it, it's going to be hard to fix.
I just wanted to mention, just you make sure it's not something like restless leg. It's just so common,
Yeah.
and it has the term restless leg, but it actually can affect the arms as well.
That's true.
And that's actually way more treatable. So, just make sure you think about that. Yeah.
Here's a question. What are the differences between Lewy body disease and Parkinson disease? How do we know that we are correctly diagnosed?
Well, there are a lot of people who think that they're not different. And, I think in the way that I look at it, just from a pathology standpoint, is really where the difference lies. And from clinically, what we see is that the way things start is a little bit different. So if someone's coming into the office and there's already concerns about dementia and memory problems, and it's my first time seeing you, I'm starting to worry that this is probably Lewy body and not just regular Parkinson's disease. Typically, there needs to be at least several years of PD before dementia. We'll say that this is just part of Parkinson's. There are a lot of other more subtle clues that we can kind of pick up on that would be suggestive more of Lewy body, but there are a lot of hints that make it think that this is just a spectrum. That's all kind of depending on what starts when. That this is all really kind of the same disease. When you look in the brain, it's actually still alpha-synuclein that's getting messed up. And in Lewy body, though, there seems to be a lot more of the synuclein burden there than in Parkinson's. But then again, I would like to think that a lot of the strategies we're using to treat Parkinson's could then potentially apply to Lewy body. So there's potentially some advantage to it there, but it can be very confusing.
Yeah, and the answer I always give is, well, I could cut open your brain and look at it, and I could tell you what it is, but that doesn't usually end well for you. And so usually I go through my speech and I say, well, this is how, if you start hallucinating before I put you on medications, or if the dementia seems early, there's plenty of things. But then at the end of the day, I always say, in real life, it doesn't matter. We're going to treat what the problem is. And so I have the same handful of medicines that we're going to use to try to treat the motor symptoms, try to treat the psychosis, the dementia. The treatment options are really the same. And so in real life, it doesn't necessarily make a difference from our standpoint. Obviously, patients always want to know what they have. They always want to know what to expect. And so there is some component of trying to be more specific about what you diagnose somebody with. But realistically, like she said, we still work on and manage things the same.
I think it changes expectations a little bit, and that's where I think it's good to know the diagnosis. But at the end of the day, it's not changing how we're treating everybody, individually that way. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Here's a question. My sleep disruption has been so bad that I was only getting an average of 4 hours, 20 minutes sleep per night over 3 months. I was on 50 200s carbidopa-levodopa ER and 6 grams of Lunesta. My psychiatrist recently switched me to Klonopin from Lunesta as a result of the webinar comment I saw. I'm scrolling down, sorry. It's a long one.
It's okay.
I have jumped up to a full 6 hours a night since. Do you know why Klonopin works better?
No. It has a really long half-life.
I'm sure there's a more scientific answer than that. At the end of the day, yeah, it lasts a long time. So in that class of medicine, it's the long-lasting one. It's the one that I go to for patients with Parkinson's disease who have sleep problems, who have active sleep, or REM behavior sleep disorder, things like that. But I use a lot of melatonin. The psychiatric teams have other medicines. There's plenty of different ways to try to get you or try to help you sleep. And if one thing isn't working, Klonopin is not the best drug for everybody. I have plenty of patients that I've put that on where it didn't help. Or it didn't help enough. And so I'm glad you found something that worked for you, but at the end of the day, it comes back to tailoring it to everybody. Why in you it specifically worked better than Lunesta? I don't know, it just did. We don't ask questions when good things happen.
I'm wondering what the underlying sleeping issue was. That it's not the same for everybody, and maybe it was REM behavioral sleep disorder, in which case the treatment is Klonopin. So maybe you were actually just treating the right thing. But there's a lot of sleep issues. Actually, can be one of the earliest symptoms of PD, and so knowing what's causing you to not sleep well is key in trying to figure out the best way to approach it. So even things like sleep apnea are a little bit more common in Parkinson's, and that's treated completely differently, and you wouldn't want to use Klonopin for that. So you need to figure out what the sleep problem is first. And
sleep problems are so variable that there's actually people who specialize in sleep for just that reason.
Exactly, and it's good to find one that's also a neurologist if you can.
Agreed.
Well, I think that about brings us to the end of our time here. If you guys have some closing comments or anything you'd like to say to wrap things up.
Stay strong. This is not going to be forever, and I think we just as a community need to keep moving forward together. I've been really encouraged with what I've been seeing on social media and with the patients I've been talking to. So just keep moving.
Agreed. I mean, this isn't much fun for us either. We're all trying to get through this together, and we all will get through this together, but keep pushing through, keep staying as positive as you can.